At the beginning of the story, a dead body is shown hanging from a tree behind a river in a deserted area. It was the year 1830. In the next scene, we see the main character of the movie, Augustus Landor, washing his hands on the riverbank. Landor is a retired policeman who, after retirement, lives in a small house built beside the river. Then, some people from a military academy come to meet Landor. Actually, the dead body, shown at the beginning of the movie, belonged to a student of that academy, and they wanted Landor to investigate the case. Landor had solved many complicated cases during his time in the police force, which earned him great respect from the top officials of the city. Because of this, the captain of the academy personally came to his house to pick him up. After reaching the academy's office, the captain praises Landor, saying that the governor himself has decided to bring Landor in to solve the case. Although Landor was a very successful policeman, in the past few years he had faced a mountain of sorrow in his personal life. His wife had died 3 years ago and his daughter had run away from home with someone. Because of this, he began to feel very lonely. Due to his loneliness, Landor started drinking and became dependent on alcohol. The colonel was already aware of the problems in Landor's personal life, so he felt uneasy about giving him such a big responsibility in this difficult situation. However, putting his personal problems aside, Landor asks the colonel the reason for calling him there. The colonel tells him that a student of the academy named Fry had committed suicide the night before, but that wasn't what was troubling the colonel and the captain. The real problem was that when Fry's body was brought to the hospital, someone had removed his heart from his chest. After this, the colonel takes Landor to the hospital where Fry's body is kept. Dr. Marquise, who is examining the body, explains to Landor how an unknown criminal had cut open the chest with a knife and cleanly removed the heart. Removing a heart from a person's chest is not an easy task. Landor asks the doctor whether a normal person could do this or if it requires a surgeon. The doctor replies that if someone has knowledge of the human body, they could also remove the heart, so being a surgeon isn't necessary. After that, Landor goes to the spot where Fry had committed suicide. There, along with the captain, is the soldier who first discovered Fry's body. When Landor questions the soldier, he says that while patrolling the area last night, he heard someone screaming. When he followed the sound, he found Fry's body hanging from a tree. The soldier nervously reveals that Fry was found hanged the previous night, yet his feet were still touching the ground. Landor immediately senses something unusual. He asks if anyone else was seen nearby, but the soldier insists he saw no one. With a faint, knowing smile, Landor dismisses him. Later, Landor and the captain return to the hospital to examine Fry's body. Inspecting it himself, Landor uncovers a deep wound at the back of Fry's head, something the doctor had failed to notice. Fry's hands are also marked with injuries, suggesting he had struggled to free himself while being hanged. To Landor, it is clear this was no suicide. Someone had attacked Fry and then staged his hanging. When the doctor arrives, he is stunned by the overlooked head injury. Together, they pry open Fry's tightly clenched fist and discover a small piece of paper containing cryptic letters. Shocked that he had missed such vital evidence, the doctor admits this clue could unravel everything. Landor takes the note, but before he can leave, the captain stops him. He requests that Landor conduct the investigation in secret, warning that if word of Fry's murder spreads, the academy's reputation will be destroyed. The captain also makes one stern demand. Landor must not touch alcohol until the case is solved. Knowing his reputation as a drunkard, Landor reluctantly agrees. The detective begins his investigation at the site where Fry's body was discovered. While searching for clues, he encounters a cadet named Edgar. With an air of mystery, Edgar reveals that he has also been conducting his own inquiry. He believes Fry's killer is a poet, and then disappears just as suddenly as he arrived. Later, Landor questions the constable who had been assigned to guard Fry's body on the night his heart was stolen. The constable explains that he remained on duty until 2:30 a.m., when an officer relieved him. But in the darkness, he hadn't seen the man's face. Stranger still, the supposed officer bore no rank badge on his shoulder, an oddity no true officer would tolerate. Disturbed by this information, Landor heads to a familiar tavern to collect his thoughts. There, he meets the bartender, Patsy, a woman he knows well. She seems uncharacteristically distressed. When Landor presses her, Patsy admits she had known Fry personally and was shaken by his death. But what unsettles Landor most is her knowledge, because, as far as he knew, only a select few within the academy were even aware of Fry's murder at the tavern. Patsy gestures toward a man seated nearby. To Landor's surprise, it is none other than Edgar. The same cadet who had once cryptically claimed Fry's killer was a poet. Curious, Landor confronts him. In his typically lyrical manner, Edgar explains that only a poet could conceive of such a macabre crime as stealing a man's heart. "I know this," Edgar insists, "because I too am a poet." But Landor quickly realizes Edgar is rambling under the heavy influence of alcohol. As Landor prepares to leave, Edgar suddenly stops him, lowering his voice to share a secret. Not long ago, Fry had quarreled with his roommate, though the reason was never revealed. Intrigued, Landor digs deeper into this lead. The next day, Landor and the captain summon 2 soldiers for questioning. One of them is Fry's roommate. When pressed about the supposed fight, the cadet denies any serious conflict. He explains that Fry had been keeping questionable company, and he was only trying to steer him back on the right path. Their argument, he insists, was nothing more than a disagreement about Fry's troubling new friends, whose names Fry had stubbornly refused to share. Landor records his statement and allows him to return to his quarters. Next, they interrogate another cadet, Stoddard, who was reportedly the last person to see Fry alive. Stoddard admits that Fry seemed to be in a rush that night, sneaking away from the officers. Fry had told him only that he had important business, but offered no details. As he recounts this, Stoddard grows pale, his unease catching Landor's attention. Suspicious, Landor presses further, but Stoddard's illness becomes evident, and Landor reluctantly dismisses him. At that moment, an officer arrives with urgent news. The heart of a cow and a goat had been cut out the previous night. Furious and fearing further atrocities, the captain declares a complete lockdown of the academy. But despite the restrictions, Landor later meets Edgar outside the grounds. He had assumed Edgar must have known Fry personally, but Edgar surprises him by admitting he never met the victim. Seeing his sharp mind, Landor proposes that they join forces to uncover the truth. Edgar readily agrees. That night, Landor entrusts Edgar with the mysterious letter discovered in Fry's clenched hand. He challenges him to decipher the cryptic, half-finished words. Later, Edgar arrives at Landor's home with a breakthrough. He reveals that the letter was written by the killer himself, a carefully constructed lure designed to trick Fry into coming to the place where he would ultimately meet his death. The decoded letter reveals a chilling truth. Fry must have known his killer personally. That would explain why he agreed to meet so late at night, without hesitation. Landor is impressed by Edgar's keen observation, though the message remains incomplete. Together, they continue piecing it apart, and soon reach a startling conclusion. The writer may have been a woman. After all, what else could tempt a young cadet to leave the academy at such an hour? Edgar then confides something deeply personal. His mother, he explains, died 20 years ago, but her spirit still lingers in his life. Each night, she whispers poems to him, which he carefully records in his diary. One morning, he awoke having written about a sorrowful girl who had committed a crime. Hours later, he saw a girl outside his window, her face hauntingly identical to the one he had just described. From that day, Edgar believed she could be the killer. He admits, however, that he only saw her once. To Landor, the tale sounds absurd, almost delusional. He begins to suspect that Edgar may be touched by madness. Later that evening, while in the company of the bartender Patsy, Landor cautiously asks her about Edgar. Patsy reassures him. Edgar is a kind boy with no family, and his mother's presence is only his way of coping with loneliness. Hearing this, Landor feels an unexpected pang of sympathy. He too knows the weight of solitude. The next day, while examining matters at the hospital, a troubling thought grips Landor. Why would someone steal a heart? The answer that forms in his mind is darker than murder itself, black magic. Following his instincts, he tracks down an abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Inside, he discovers chilling evidence: ritual markings, demonic symbols, and signs of occult practices. By the time Edgar arrives, Landor has already pieced together a horrifying picture. Someone has been harvesting hearts for satanic rituals. Seeking guidance, they consult one of Landor's acquaintances, a man well-versed in the history of witchcraft. The scholar directs Landor to a rare volume written by a famed witch hunter. In its pages, they read that one way to appease the devil is by offering the heart of a hanged man. The revelation is both grotesque and illuminating. The friend adds more. Centuries ago, a notorious witch hunter named Henry Leclerc claimed to have slain over 700 witches. In his writings, he even described a ritual granting immortality. But the book that contained such knowledge vanished long ago, its whereabouts unknown. With this knowledge in hand, Landor devises a plan. He instructs Edgar to befriend the cadets and quietly discover if anyone among them has an interest in black magic. Edgar accepts the task and, blending into the soldiers' company, soon uncovers a crucial lead. Artemis, the doctor's son, possesses knowledge of dark rituals. Under the pretense of casual friendship, Edgar begins spending more time with Artemis. Before long, Artemis invites him to a gathering, a private party with his closest companions. Edgar, ever careful, reports everything back to Landor. That night, Edgar attends the party. Surrounded by Artemis's friends, he quickly wins their favor by reciting vivid poetry, charming the crowd into accepting him. Through their drunken conversations, Edgar learns two critical truths. Both Artemis and his friend Bellinger knew Fry well, and Fry had once been in love with Artemis's sister. But the romance ended in heartbreak. She had betrayed him, leaving him devastated. Meanwhile, alone in his sleep, Landor experiences a haunting vision. He hears sobbing, and when he investigates, he sees his own daughter weeping before him. Her presence is fleeting. She vanishes as quickly as she appeared. The vision leaves Landor shattered, overwhelmed with grief, for since their estrangement, such painful apparitions have plagued him often. The next morning, during Fry's funeral, his grieving mother approaches Landor. With trembling hands, she gives him Fry's diary, believing it might help solve the mystery. But the journal is encrypted, filled with coded writings that only deepen the mystery. Determined, Landor begins working tirelessly to break it. Meanwhile, Edgar turns his attention to Artemis's sister, Leah, the very girl he once saw outside his window, the one who matched the figure from his mother's haunting poem. He arranges to meet her in a secluded spot, intending to question her. But when Edgar sees Leah's fragile beauty and innocence, his suspicion melts into something dangerous: love. Suddenly, Leah collapses into a violent epileptic seizure. Edgar is horrified, watching helplessly as she writhes in pain. Moments later, she recovers as if nothing happened, leaving Edgar shaken and even more drawn to her. That same night, after relentless effort, Landor finally cracks the code within Fry's diary, uncovering its hidden words. But before he can share his discovery, Edgar faces danger of his own. On his way back from the academy, he senses someone following him. Moments later, Bellinger attacks, furious and jealous. He warns Edgar to stay away from Leah. The confrontation escalates until Landor arrives and beats Bellinger back, forcing him to flee. Enraged, Edgar lashes out, vowing that if Bellinger dares to come between him and Leah again, he will kill him. Landor, recognizing Edgar's growing obsession, struggles to calm him, pulling him back from the edge. The following morning brings grim news. The captain informs Landor that Bellinger has vanished. Alarmed, Landor joins the search with the soldiers. Their hunt doesn't last long. Soon, they find Bellinger's body hanging from a tree, just like Fry before him. Bellinger's body is brought to the hospital, and the scene is even more grotesque than Fry's. His heart has been cut from his chest, But this time the wounds are different. Dr. Marquis points out that the mutilations don't match Fry's. This is the work of another hand. What's worse, Bellinger had also been rendered impotent. His body desecrated in ways that send a shudder through the room. The Colonel, enraged by the lack of progress, lashes out at Landor. He accuses him of wasting time and failing to uncover real evidence. The captain, however, points the finger squarely at Edgar. He reveals that, during dinner the previous evening, Edgar publicly ranted about his fight with Bellinger and even threatened to kill him in front of the other cadets. Landor leaps to Edgar's defense, insisting the boy is impulsive, not murderous. But then the captain delivers another revelation. The previous summer, Edgar had fought with Fry as well. The Colonel admits he has long wanted to arrest Edgar, but lacks hard proof. The revelation shakes Landor. He remembers Edgar denying any connection to Fry, yet now the truth paints him in a suspicious light. Landor storms to Edgar and confronts him angrily. Cornered, Edgar explains that since joining the academy, he has clashed with countless cadets. Many mocked him for his appearance and his eccentric personality, but he insists he has never let hatred fester into vengeance. His words are so earnest that Landor softens, once again convinced of Edgar's innocence. That evening, Dr. Marquis hosts a dinner at his home in Bellinger's honor. Both Landor and Edgar are invited. The atmosphere turns sour when Artemis lashes out at Landor, hinting he suspects the detective of rifling through his belongings. His sharp insults embarrass his family. His mother storms away from the table, and Leah quietly follows. The doctor, however, smooths things over with an apology and offers Landor a drink to lighten his mood. As the doctor mixes the drink, Landor's eyes wander to the shelves and lock on a book, an ancient volume on magic. His suspicions flare. Casually, he begins questioning the doctor about his daughter, Leah. Marquis confesses that Leah suffers from a grave illness, a condition that fills her with constant fear and has kept her from marrying. Artemis soon interrupts, urging them to listen to Leah play the piano. Landor excuses himself, slipping away under the pretense of needing fresh air. Instead, he sneaks into Artemis's room. There, he finds something damning. A military coat stripped of its rank insignia, just like the one the night guard had described. Before he can process it, Mrs. Marquis enters, startled by the discovery. When Landor presents the coat downstairs, Dr. Marquis insists it belonged to his late brother and claims ignorance as to why it was in Artemis's room. Before Artemis can defend himself, the captain arrives with urgent news. Another cadet, Stoddard, is missing. Stoddard, the same boy who had nervously spoken to Landor about Fry's last night alive. They rush to search his quarters. Landor notes that Stoddard's personal belongings are gone, suggesting not an abduction but a deliberate escape. He concludes that Stoddard, Bellinger, and Fry were close friends, and seeing Fry and Bellinger brutally murdered likely drove Stoddard to flee in terror, fearing he'd be next. Still, suspicion weighs heavily on Artemis. The coat, the occult whispers, the growing chain of deaths. All eyes fall on him. Yet Landor insists there is no definitive proof, and pleads for more time. Meanwhile, Edgar spends time with Leah. He recites poetry to her, baring his heart, and she takes him for a walk. Edgar is hopelessly enchanted by her, blind to everything else. Elsewhere, Landor visits his old friend once more. There, he learns a critical truth. Henry Leclerc, the famed witch hunter who wrote of immortality rituals, was no holy man at all. He was a devil worshipper. But in the end, Edgar makes a choice. He realizes that simply handing the culprits over to justice would never be enough punishment for the monsters who had destroyed Landor's daughter's life. With a heavy heart, he burns the evidence, erasing the last chance of exposing them. For Landor, everything is lost. The case, the truth, even his fragile hope for closure, gone. All that remains are the haunting memories of his beloved daughter. Burdened by grief, he climbs to the top of the mountain, longing for peace, and to finally reunite with his family. And that is how this dark and tragic tale comes to an end. Friends, if you enjoyed this story and felt immersed in its mystery, Don't forget to subscribe and support the channel so we can continue bringing you more stories just like this. Thanks for watching.